Good afternoon, preppers. Welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thank you for joining us. When we look at history, it's a great teacher, isn't it? Learning lessons. During the Great Depression, after we see the crash of the markets and bank failures, hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes because they couldn't pay their mortgage. They were evicted and were out in the streets. And there's something that's coming that's much worse. Nearly 1/3 of U.S. home buyers in the last 6 months have paid all cash to avoid high mortgage rates. So because of mortgage rates being so high because of the feds, 1/3 of homebuyers have been paying for houses entirely in cash to avoid those mortgage rates. According to NAR data, 1/4 of U.S. homebuyers made all cash purchases, which in itself is amazing to me. Buying a home with cash is obviously the way you want to go, but it's so difficult, isn't it? Especially to get into a decent home in an area that's actually going to have good jobs, etc. But for the fact that some people are actually using cash to pay for those mortgages, it amazes me even more for the fact that there's a lot of people who can't even afford to pay for groceries because of inflation and such. And the feds keep raising interest rates. Now, as this continues, it's not simply just a housing market, but commercial markets too. During the Great Depression, 300,000 businesses went out of business. And in today's understanding, if we looked at 300,000 businesses going out of business today, we all know it's going to be the mom and pop businesses, the small local companies, whereas the corporations can actually take bigger hits. Even right now, we see major corporations are shutting down stores all across the country to try to make ends meet as we push ourselves further and further into this economic crisis. From Fortune magazine, Morgan Stanley analysts are forecasting something worse than the great financial crisis for commercial real estate. After the banking crisis, could the next domino be all those empty office buildings in your downtown? Investors and economists are sounding the alarm about the commercial real estate market seeing trouble ahead with refinancing. And it's worse than that because there's no way this bank financial crisis is over. We're definitely going to see more banks coming down. And more you're going to start seeing all those commercial areas where you see retail stores are going to start disappearing and seeing more and more businesses going out of business, just like in the Great Depression, but again, far worse. And it's not just in the United States. Fears mount that Europe's commercial real estate sector could be the next to fall. So without actually going through the article, the point has been made that we're seeing another financial crisis happening like we saw 2007, 2008. During that time, it's simply because they gave out mortgages way more than people could afford. That's not what's happening now. Now because of inflation, now because of unemployment, labor shortages, all these problems where people can't get enough money to pay their mortgages. On top of that, the Fed's raising interest rates continuously. It is stifling the economy so much that people are starting to lose their home. Look at this. Billionaire investor Barry Sternlicht says inflation is going to drop hard. Just look at rent. Toward the end of last year, Sternlicht said the economy is slowing on its own after calling the Federal Reserve's rate hikes self-inflicted suicide. And he said inflation is coming down hard, and it's coming down a lot faster than people thought, sounding an alarm. And it's one of those situations, it's actually bad either way. I don't see inflation coming down personally. I still see it still going up. And because it goes up and up and up, especially for essential items, even groceries, it makes it so we can't afford to buy any other thing or even possibly even your mortgage, especially car payments too. Those really expensive cars that people buy, we're starting to see a lot more of those going up for sale right now because people can't continue to pay for them. But with Sternlicht, he said basically if the inflation's going down, you think that's a good thing. No, because it's going down so hard. This is exactly what happened in the Great Depression. It crashed so hard, the entire economy stalled. Now we're seeing what we've been talking about, businesses going out of business, the housing market crashing where people can't afford their houses anymore, trying to get into paying for rent now. And we're seeing this in the rent numbers. We're already heading in that direction, and that's what Sternlicht says. So we're right at the precipice, from what I see, of going from a recession with inflation into a crash of economy heading us into a greater depression that happened before. I would say probably it's going to happen this summer or possibly going into fall. Maybe sooner, it's difficult to say. But we need to continue to prepare, especially when it comes to food and such, because besides simply so many businesses going out of business and people losing their home, there was a lot of famine too. A lot of people couldn't afford to buy a lot of food. And back then it was because of the Dust Bowl. Now we're actually seeing the Southwest completely drying up. We're heading into the same kind of scenario once again, and we need to prepare for this and be ready. So continue the preps, everybody. Thank you for watching.